She thought he was the new trainee. He let her believe it, until she walked into his office the next day. "Wait! Oh no, no, no!" Eliana cried out as the stack of papers in her hand slipped and spread across the shiny marble floor of the entrance hall. She quickly fell to her knees, hurrying to pick them up. These were not just any papers. They were the important notes for the top team's Monday morning meeting, set to begin in just 10 minutes. If even one graph or money report was gone, her boss would be very angry. As she reached for the last page, someone got to it first. "Be careful," a calm voice said. She looked up, seeing a man in a neat white shirt, sleeves rolled up past his forearms. His dark hair was a bit messy, and his tie was loose enough to suggest either a long morning or a relaxed attitude. He held out the paper with a small smile. "You dropped some numbers here," he added, looking at the facts on the page. She quickly grabbed it. "Thank you. You just saved me." "Happy to help," he said with a slight nod. Eliana stood, putting the now collected papers tightly into her folder. She looked him over. White shirt, dark pants, no work badge visible, and clearly not someone she had seen before. She tilted her head. "Wait, are you new? I haven't seen you around." He stood, putting his hands in his pockets. "Kind of." She playfully narrowed her eyes. "Let me guess. You're the new trainee we were supposed to get last week, the one from headquarters." There was a short, quiet moment. Then the man smiled again. "David?" She nodded, smoothing her skirt and standing tall. "Well, David, welcome to the lower levels of corporate life. I'm Eliana, paper runner, printer fixer. I sit so far from a window I sometimes forget what sunlight looks like." David laughed a little. "Sounds like an important job." "Ah, important is a bit much," she said, smoothing her shirt and holding the folder tight to her chest. "But hey, it pays my rent, mostly." She stepped into the elevator, holding the door open for him. "Come on. You'll want to avoid looking too lost on your first day. That's when the tough people sense weakness." David followed her in, standing beside her as the doors closed. Eliana pushed the button for floor 12. "That's where the marketing chaos happens. I suggest smiling a lot and keeping your coffee orders straight. And avoid talking too much to the high-level people unless you're good at dealing with cold stares and looking down on others." "Understood," David said with a smirk. She leaned against the side rail, her eyes sparkling with dry humor. "Seriously, though, people up there are smart but very intense. They like everything perfect. They expect quiet. So don't mention you helped me or that I spilled everything. I don't need more reasons for my stressed intern label." David raised a hand, promising silence. "My lips are sealed." And she added in a joking, serious tone, "If Carol from finance offers you a protein bar, say no. Just trust me." He laughed again, an easy, real sound. She glanced sideways at him. "You seem much too calm for your first day. Most trainees look like they're about to faint." "Maybe I'm just good at pretending," he said. The elevator chimed. Eliana grabbed her folder tightly. "Well, good luck, David. Maybe I'll see you at the free granola station later." "Looking forward to it," he replied. She stepped out quickly, rushing toward the meeting room. David stayed behind in the elevator, watching the doors close with a quiet smile. He said nothing, made no correction. David just smiled, said nothing, and let the misunderstanding begin. By the end of the week, it had become a quiet habit. Lunch at the cafeteria with the new trainee, laughter over cheap coffee, and shared glances that made Eliana feel strangely understood. She didn't quite know how or why it had started, only that it had become the easiest part of her days. She was the one who started it. After all, he had saved her before that meeting, chasing her down with the folders she nearly lost her job over, and she felt she owed him. That Monday, she saw him appear near the desk, near the lockers, and she waved 2 plastic trays of food from the cafeteria as if it were delicious food, an invitation. "You saved my backside," she declared, setting one tray down. "Least I can do is treat you to overcooked pasta and basic garlic bread." David looked amused. "Is this how workplace thankfulness works now?" "In my world, yes. And besides, the spaghetti has character, kind of like you." He chuckled and began eating without complaint. From that moment on, they fell into an unsaid pattern. Lunch breaks spent at the old table near the vending machines, paper cups of watery coffee. Elena explaining the office's unofficial rules. The silent fight over the good stapler, the special hidden supply of Carol's odd protein bars, and the mythical working copier on the second floor. David listened, laughed, and offered a casual, perfectly timed remark that left her giggling longer than she should have. But more than that, he listened, truly listened, and that was something she wasn't used to. What surprised her most wasn't their playful talk or even their strange, unexpected connection. It was how easy it was to talk to him. Not just about work, but about life. One rainy afternoon, as they watched gray lines slide down the window, she stirred sugar into her tea and spoke, her voice softer than usual. "My mom is on dialysis," she said, 3 times a week. David looked up, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. "That sounds like a lot." "It is," she admitted, then gave a small shrug. "But you get used to it. I mean, she's tougher than I'll ever be. I just keep things going." He didn't rush to fill the quiet. He didn't say, "I'm sorry," in that automatic, awkward way people did. He just nodded and let it stay there, respected and not judged. "I work nights at the coffee shop near my apartment," she added after a moment. "It helps. Bills don't wait." David gave a low whistle. "Do you ever sleep?" "Enough to work," she replied with a grin. "Barely." Then, eyes on the rainy sky, she said, "Someday I want to open my own small shop, a print place near a school or a library, maybe add a coffee machine, hang some photos on the wall. Nothing fancy, just quiet, just mine." She didn't realize she was holding her breath until she glanced at him. Usually this was where people laughed or told her to be realistic, but David didn't. "Sounds like a place I'd go to," he said. She blinked. "Really?" "Yeah. It's not big or showy, but it sounds useful, safe, and completely yours." She smiled, surprised at how much his words meant. "God, I don't know why I'm telling you all this," she mumbled, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Maybe because I'm a safe stranger," he offered, with terrible cafeteria food taste. "Maybe," she whispered. Later that week, she struggled to carry a box of bottled water up the narrow back stairs. Before she could even curse, David appeared behind her, silently lifting half the load from her arms. She nearly dropped the rest in surprise. "You don't have to." "You looked one step from swearing." "I was mid-swear," she muttered out of breath. The next morning she opened her drawer and found a sticky note waiting inside. The handwriting was neat, steady. "One step at a time. You're doing great." Elena stared at it for a long moment. Then she carefully peeled it from the drawer and tucked it into her wallet. She couldn't explain the warmth growing in her chest, or the way her fingers touched the note more than once throughout the day, but something had begun to grow in the middle of her very ordinary life. Quiet, careful, like sunlight sneaking in through a window no one had noticed. And David, he still hadn't corrected her once. It was supposed to be a normal Thursday. Elena had just fixed the difficult printer for the 3rd time that morning and was about to sneak away for a 5-minute coffee break when her boss's voice cut through the hum of the office lights. "Elena," Mark called, not even looking up from his phone. "They need you upstairs. Important meeting, boardroom setup, drinks, pastries, everything. Don't spill anything." She froze. Upstairs meant the executive floor. She had never been up there. It was almost a different world. Marble floors, glass offices, leather chairs, and people who spoke in abbreviations and barely made eye contact with anyone not on their pay level. She nodded quickly, grabbing the refreshment cart and wiping her palms against her skirt to hide the sudden sweat. The elevator ride felt slower than usual, though she was alone. She caught sight of her reflection in the mirrored panel and winced. There were faint, dark circles under her eyes from a late shift at the coffee shop the night before. Her simple white shirt was slightly wrinkled from rushing that morning, and her hair, blonde and usually kept in a neat bun, had frizzed at the edges from the building's humidity. She took a breath and stepped out as the elevator doors opened. The boardroom was larger than any room she'd ever worked in. Floor-to-ceiling windows filled the room with sunlight. A shiny wooden table stretched across the space like a path, surrounded by tall leather chairs. The air felt colder up here, controlled, Important. She moved quietly, head down, arranging pastries and coffee cups with practiced care. A few high-level people were already seated, whispering in low tones about quarterly reports and future plans. Then came the sound of more footsteps. She looked up, and her world shifted. At the head of the table stood David, but not the David she knew from lunch breaks and sticky note encouragement. He was in a perfectly fitted navy suit, freshly pressed. His posture was sharp, his expression calm, confident, untouchable. "Everyone," the regional director announced, "please welcome David Laurent, our new Vice President of Strategic Development. He's just returned from leading our operations in Europe." The room clapped. Eliana didn't move. Her fingers clenched the edge of the tray until her knuckles turned white. Her breath stuck in her throat. "Vice President." Her brain stopped, replaying every word she had ever spoken to him. All the jokes, the complaints, the small secrets, the lunchroom sarcasm, the time she taught him how to clear a paper jam and teased him about being useless with printers. The night she said she wanted to open a dollar photo booth and he had just listened quietly. He had never corrected her, not once. Her cheeks burned with the weight of it all, a deep, embarrassing red that spread from her ears to her neck. She set the final cup down and turned to leave, walking faster than necessary toward the door. But before she could escape, his voice stopped her. "Eliana." She froze, hand on the handle. He spoke softly. "Can we talk after the meeting?" She gave a barely noticeable nod. Then she left, eyes fixed on the floor. She didn't cry, not in front of them, not even in the elevator. But when she reached the stairwell, a place no one ever went except maintenance staff, she sat down on the cold metal step and let the tears fall silently. An hour later, she was in the break room, pretending to be busy with the napkin drawer, when she heard his voice again. "Eliana." She turned slowly. David stood there, still in that suit, still looking every bit the man she now knew he was, but his expression was nothing like the one she saw worn by executives. It was open, honest, regretful. "I'm sorry," he said. "When you thought I was a trainee, I should have corrected you." She swallowed. "Then why didn't you?" He paused, his words heavy. "Because it was the first time someone didn't care who I was. You didn't want anything from me. You didn't pretend. You were just you, and I didn't want that to end." Her throat tightened. "So what? I was your little escape, something interesting?" "No." He stepped forward, but not too close. "You were real, the only real thing I had all week." She shook her head, blinking fast. "I get it," he added softly. "You probably don't want to see me again, but I meant every word, every lunch, every note." She didn't say anything. Couldn't. She looked at him one last time, his expression open, waiting, and then turned and walked away. Eliana had always known her place in the building, third floor, far from the glass offices and boardrooms above. But now, after everything, even the third floor felt too close. For days, she avoided the top floor like it was dangerous. She stopped using the main elevator. She took the stairs, hid in storage rooms when she saw someone in a suit, and changed her routes to avoid seeing him. David Laurent. She still couldn't say his full name without her chest feeling tight. She had poured her true self into those lunches, those walks, those quiet coffee moments, and all the while he had been someone else entirely, someone with power, status, expectations. Was it a game to him? Her phone vibrated one morning while she was organizing a delivery list. A message from David. "I never laughed at you. I never meant to hurt you. I liked you from the first moment you talked to me, like I was just a person." She stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the screen, then locked the phone without replying. The next day, another message from David. "It wasn't because you didn't know who I was. It was because you were still completely yourself. Even when you thought I was nobody." That one she'd deleted. But the worst part wasn't the messages. It was how much she missed him. His silly jokes about elevator buttons. His real attention when she talked about her mom. The way he always waited for her to finish her sentence, even when the office was busy around them. He had seen her, not just her name badge or her job title, but the actual her. and somehow that made the feeling of being let down worse. 3 days later, she returned to her desk after lunch and found a small paper bag resting on her chair. Confused, she opened it. The warm, earthy smell of ground coffee rose instantly. Her favorite blend, the dark roast she had once mentioned during a quick talk near the vending machine. Inside the bag was a handwritten note on thick paper. "Thank you for making me feel seen." Her breath caught. She sat down slowly, holding the note. He remembered all the small things, the things that no one ever really noticed. Not the way she looked, not the work she did, but the person she was underneath all of it. She stared at the note for a long time. Still, she didn't reply. But the anger inside her began to fade. Not into forgiveness, not yet, but into a quiet, lasting pain. That afternoon, she brewed the coffee and drank it at her desk. And when the scent filled her corner of the floor, something softened in her chest. She didn't smile, but she didn't throw the note away either. The sky broke open around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, pouring rain across the glass front of the office building. Eliana was balancing a stack of printer paper when she noticed the heavy rain from the break room window. She sighed. Of course, she had forgotten her umbrella again. She took the long hallway toward the back exit, hoping to catch the bus before the rain worsened. But when she turned the corner, she stopped suddenly. There, just outside the rear lobby doors, was David. He was standing next to one of the janitors, Mr. Ramon, who always worked the evening shift, helping him fold a large, wind-damaged umbrella. The fabric had torn on one side, flapping uselessly like a broken wing. David, now wet from the waist down, laughed softly as he helped the older man struggle with the stubborn metal frame back into shape. It was the same laugh she remembered from the elevator. The same gentle patience. No suit jacket today, just a rolled-up white shirt and pants. For a moment, he looked like the trainee she had first met. Eliana didn't move. She watched as David patted Mr. Ramon on the shoulder and waved him off toward the parking lot. Then he turned and saw her. Their eyes met through the rain-streaked glass. He didn't smile. Not right away, just watched her the way he always did, like she was the only person in the room or the world. Eliana hesitated, then opened the door and stepped under the narrow concrete roof. The rain was a wall of silver just a few feet away. She tucked her hands into her cardigan sleeves and stared out into the storm. David didn't say anything at first. "Still no umbrella?" he asked gently. She shook her head, her lips twitching. "Still bad at remembering the basics," he offered her a half smile. "Some things don't change." The silence that followed was calmer than awkwardness, like space waiting to be filled with something real. Eliana breathed out slowly. "I'm not mad because you're the vice president." David looked over. "I'm mad," she continued, "because when I talked to you I let my guard down. I let you in. And now I don't know what was real." His voice came soft. "Everything I said was real." She turned toward him, the rain reflected in her eyes. "You let me believe you were someone else," she said. "You let me trust you. And I thought maybe—" Her voice caught. "I thought maybe I mattered. Not just because you found me interesting, but because you saw me." David stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough that his voice dropped low between them. "You did, Eliana. You still do?" Eliana swallowed, unsure what to say. He added, quieter, "You're the only person who ever talked to me without changing it based on my job title. The only one who didn't flinch when I said something awkward. You teased me, Eliana. You told me off for leaving coffee rings. You told me your story without expecting anything back. That meant more than you'll ever know." She looked away, blinking fast. "I didn't want to be a test," she mumbled. "You weren't." She met his gaze again, and for once there was no suit, no office walls, no layers of power and acting between them. Just two people under a rain-soaked roof, open and honest. He stepped back half a pace like he knew she still needed space. The silence stretched, but it wasn't heavy. "Want to share a cab?" he asked, his voice light. She paused, then nodded. Just once. And beside her, David smiled. Not the smooth executive grin, but the one that had started it all. They never called it dating. Not out loud, at least. There were no labels, no big announcements, just the quiet certainty of two people slowly learning the shape of each other's world. After work, when the office lights dimmed and the sound of keyboards gave way to the low hum of janitor carts and security doors clicking shut, Eliana and David would slip out into the city. No destination planned, just footsteps falling into rhythm. But soon, their evenings together took on a shape unlike anything she'd known before. They found each other in places no corporate badge could follow. A second-hand bookstore where a fat orange cat slept on the counter beside the cash register. A Vietnamese restaurant with only 6 outdoor tables and a chalkboard menu. A late-night food truck that served only 2 dishes but never disappointed. And a park bench overlooking the river where streetlights shimmered on the water like fallen stars. There, in those shared hours, they talked more than they ate, more than they touched. They listened. One evening, seated across from each other at a wobbly patio table beside a string of mismatched lanterns, Eliana wrapped her fingers around a steaming bowl of pho and breathed out slowly, like she was letting something settle. "I used to dream about owning a photo booth," she mumbled, her eyes not quite meeting his. David looked up, truly curious. "Like the ones in shopping malls?" She smiled, small and almost nostalgic. "Not exactly the portable kind, you know, with instant prints. Years ago, I volunteered at this community center. There were kids who didn't have a single photo of themselves, not one. I remember this girl, Alyssa. She must have been 6, stared at the camera like it was magic. And when her photo printed, she held it like it was a treasure." David didn't speak. He just leaned in a little, the city's soft hum filling the spaces she left between her words. "I wanted to set one up outside schools," she continued. "Charge $1, just enough to cover the paper and ink. Give kids something to keep a memory, proof that they mattered." She looked up, half expecting the usual gentle dismissal people gave when she talked like this. But David's voice was quiet and sure. "That's beautiful." She gave a shy shrug. "It's kind of silly." "No," he said firmly. "It's probably the most not silly thing I've ever heard." There was a softness in his gaze that made her look away. "Most people want fancy boats or crypto or company stock," he added. "You want to give a kid a photo that says something?" Eliana laughed quietly. "Something not practical, maybe." "Something good?" he corrected. A quiet moment settled between them, warm, unhurried. Then David stirred his tea and said, "When I was 12, my dad sat me down and told me I'd be CEO someday. Laurent men don't get to wander aimlessly," he said. "They don't follow, they lead." Eliana looked at him then, truly looked. For the first time, the edges of his voice held something deeper. "Since then," he continued, "every room I walk into, I'm either underestimated or feared, never truly seen, not for who I am." He smiled faintly. "Then one day, you looked at me and said, 'You spilled your coffee, intern.' And for the first time in a long time, I felt like just a guy with poor coordination and a coffee problem." She laughed, and something softened inside her. She reached across the table and lightly touched the edge of his hand. It wasn't quite a gesture of love, but it was something, a connection, a beginning. They kept meeting after hours, under umbrellas, in parts of the city where names and job titles faded. Sometimes it was coffee to go and quiet laughter. Sometimes it was walking without talking, letting silence do the hard work. One night he brought her a photo printer. It was old, used, and missing a manual, but it worked. She spent that weekend printing photos in her tiny apartment, of herself, of her mother asleep on the couch, of David caught mid-laugh with a teacup in hand. "You look real," she told him when she showed him the print. He'd smiled. "That's because I was." In those simple things, a note, a printer, a dream gently given back to her, something honest took root. Not loud, not showy, but real. And in that truth, both of them, in their own quiet ways, began to believe, not just in the idea of each other, but in the possibility of something lasting, something that didn't need a name to be true. The whispering started like static, soft, spread out, and almost easy to ignore. But by the end of the week, the office was buzzing louder than the copy machines. Eliana, the file clerk from the ground floor, with him? Maybe that's why he always gets his coffee from the cafeteria. She heard it in the hallways, in the pause after greetings, in the sideways glances and half smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes. One morning, as she placed a folder on a manager's desk, he smirked and said, "Moving up fast, huh?" She said nothing, but inside, something broke. It all came to a head the following Monday. An anonymous email was sent to Human Resources. Subject line, "Wrong behavior, executive favoritism." No signature, no proof, just a mix of hints and judgments. Lines accusing Eliana of using personal connections to get ahead and questioning the fairness of leadership decisions regarding junior staff. She was called in for a private talk. Sitting across from the HR director, hands tight in her lap, Eliana felt like she was back in high school, being asked to explain why she missed curfew. "We're not making any guesses," the director said gently. "But we received a report, and because it involves someone in upper leadership, we have to look into it." Eliana opened her mouth, but no words came. Her mind raced through everything: the late walks, the printer he gave her, even the gentle way he looked at her when no one else did. She wasn't ashamed of any of it, but she was afraid of what people thought they saw. "I never asked him for anything," she whispered. "Not a raise, not a title, nothing." The HR director nodded, not committing to anything. "We understand. For now, just continue your work as usual. We'll speak again soon." She walked out of the room feeling numb. That afternoon, David stood at the door of the HR office, calm, composed, but there was a seriousness in his voice. "I'd like to make something clear," he said. The director blinked. "Mr. Laurent, this is still being reviewed." "I know, and I'm not here to interfere, but I want this officially recorded." He paused. "Eliana never asked for my attention. She never sought special treatment. If anything, I was the one drawn to her because she treated me like a person, not a position." The director frowned. "We understand your purpose, and I'm willing to reveal everything," he added. "Our conversations, our meetings. If needed, I'll step back from any decision involving her department. But I will not let an untrue guess ruin the good name of someone who has done nothing but work honestly." The room fell silent. Later that week, Eliana was called in again. She expected a warning, a formal statement, maybe even a termination letter. Instead, the director handed her a new folder. "The PR team reviewed your writing samples, the ones you submitted last year for the newsletter project." Eliana blinked. "I thought those were dismissed." "They were overlooked," the director admitted. "But they're impressive. There's a temporary opening for a junior PR coordinator. It's not a promotion, but it's a move to a floor where your voice can be used." Eliana sat in shocked silence. Then she asked quietly, "This isn't because of him?" "No," the director said. "It's because of you." She nodded, a slow, stunned smile creeping onto her lips. Later, as she packed her few things from the supply closet, someone had scribbled a note on a sticky note and left it on her drawer. "You kept your head up. That matters more than any title." No name, no signature. But somehow Eliana knew who had written it. The sun slanted through the windows in long golden lines as Eliana stepped into the small shop at the corner of Maple and 3rd. The doorbell chimed softly behind her, the scent of old wood and fresh paint greeting her like an old friend. She blinked at the space, barely recognizing it. The last time she had passed this storefront, it was shut and forgotten. A closed-down photo shop that no one had entered in years. Now light-filled, newly sanded floors. Shelves lined the wall with delicate tins of tea, and at the back, under a window that let the afternoon pour in, was a counter with a brand-new instant photo printer. David stood behind it, sleeves rolled up, dust smudged across the collar of his shirt. He turned when he heard her steps. "You came," he said, smiling. "You said it was important," she replied, stepping forward, her eyes looking at the change. "This place is beautiful." "It's not finished," he said, "but it is starting." He reached behind the counter and picked up a small camera, an old instant camera, its buttons shiny from polish. "I bought this place last month," he said, handing it to her. "It used to be the only photo shop for 10 blocks. I asked the old owner why he closed. He said, 'Kids stopped printing memories. Everything's on screens now.'" Eliana looked down at the camera in her hands, then back at him. "I want this to be something different," he continued. "A place where kids can come after school, get a photo printed for $1, a picture of a birthday, a friend, a good test score, something real, And while they wait, maybe they sit down for tea. "Photo and tea?" she asked, a smile pulling at the corners of her lips. He nodded. "I remembered what you said about pictures that cost $1 but last a lifetime." She looked at him, emotion catching in her throat. "You did all this for them?" David stepped closer. "For you, for what matters to you." The silence between them was soft, full of light. She felt the weight of it, not heavy, but steady, something real, something firm. "You never needed me to build dreams for you," he said. "You just needed someone who saw yours." She blinked away the sudden sting in her eyes. "I never thought I'd be someone people built things for." "You are," he said simply. "You always were." Then from his jacket pocket, he pulled out a small box. Her breath caught. He didn't speak at first, just looked at her the way he had since the beginning, not through her job title, not through expectation, but through the quiet wonder of someone who had finally found a home in a person. "I let you call me the intern," he said, kneeling slowly to one knee, "because for the first time in years, I wasn't treated like a title. I wasn't the Lauron name. I was just a man holding your folder, hoping you'd smile." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, timeless. "I have had many names," he said. "Vice President, Board Member, Heir. But the only title I want is the one I hope you'll give me." Eliana stood frozen, tears falling without permission. "Will you marry me?" he asked. She couldn't speak at first. Her heart was beating too loudly. But then, through the blur of tears and joy and disbelief, she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." He stood, slipping the ring onto her finger, and she threw her arms around him, laughter and tears mixing into one. Outside, the world kept turning. But inside that sunlit shop, two people stood with no more names, no more titles, just two hearts that had found a place to belong.